The station stood cloaked in midnight. Fog curled around the platform like a shroud. A single light flickered overhead, casting long, dancing shadows. The tracks stretched into the distance, swallowed by the swirling mist. Nathan Hale huddled deeper into his coat. His eyes, dull and shadowed, darted nervously around the platform. He had sought inspiration, sought to capture the essence of fear itself. He had found it. The manuscript had been his undoing. It had promised him fame, whispered of literary immortality. Instead, it had brought him ruin. He gripped the briefcase tighter, feeling the worn leather beneath his fingers. Tonight, he hoped to silence the whispers. The old wooden bench creaked under Nathan's weight as he sat down. He reached into his coat pocket, his fingers brushing against a stiff piece of paper. The ticket, the last train, destination midnight. He didn't remember buying it. It was as if it had simply appeared. A chill ran down his spine. He should leave, destroy the ticket, forget this night ever happened. But something held him back. A morbid curiosity. The ticket promised escape, a journey into the unknown. Nathan yearned to outrun his own shadow. He glanced at his watch. The hand stood frozen at 11:59. And then the clock struck 12. The air grew colder, the fog thicker. A low rumble vibrated through the ground. The train was coming. He stood, his legs stiff and unsteady. There would be no turning back. A low whistle cut through the silence. The whistle grew louder, accompanied by a rhythmic chugging. Through the swirling mist, a shape began to emerge. The train emerged slowly, reluctantly, as if dragged unwillingly from the abyss. It looked less like a mode of transportation and more like a sarcophagus on wheels. The train screeched to a halt before him. Sparks showered from the brakes, momentarily illuminating the platform. Nathan recoiled, his hand instinctively going to his face. He fought the urge to turn and run, but something held him rooted to the spot. The door at the end of the car slid open with a groan, revealing a glimpse of the train's interior. Nathan hesitated at the threshold. He glanced back at the station, at the fog-shrouded platform. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The door slid shut behind him with a heavy thud, severing his connection to the outside world. The silence inside the train was as thick and heavy as the velvet curtains. He set his briefcase down on the plush seat beside him. The train car was empty, devoid of any other passengers. The only sound was the gentle rocking of the train on the tracks. He was alone. Utterly alone. He walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The air grew colder as he moved further into the car, and then he heard it. A soft whisper, barely audible. It was a warning. He took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for the briefcase. He saw nothing. It was just the wind, he told himself. And then a figure emerged from the shadows at the far end of the train car. It moved with an unnatural grace, gliding silently. It was the conductor. He had arrived. The conductor stopped a few paces away. Nathan stood frozen, caught in the beam of the conductor's unseen gaze. The conductor extended a gloved hand, beckoning Nathan closer. It was an invitation he couldn't refuse. He took a hesitant step forward, compelled by an unseen force. The conductor maintained his silence as Nathan drew closer, the only sound the gentle rocking of the train and the steady thrum of the engine. The air crackled with unspoken words, a silent dialogue passing between them. Nathan felt a strange sense of surrender wash over him, as if his fate was no longer his own. He stopped before the conductor, close enough now to make out the faintest glimmer of light reflecting off the figure's eyes. They were like chips of ice, cold and piercing, devoid of any discernible emotion. He felt a tremor of fear course through him, a primal instinct screaming at him to run, to escape while he still could. The conductor's hand remained outstretched, palm upturned, an unspoken command. Nathan hesitated for a moment longer, torn between defiance and resignation. He glanced back down the length of the empty train car, the plush velvet seats seeming to mock him with their vacant stares. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. With a resigned sigh, Nathan reached out and placed his hand in the conductor's. The glove was surprisingly cold, the leather stiff and unyielding. He felt a strange tingling sensation where their skin touched, a jolt of energy that raced up his arm and spread through his body like a shock. The conductor closed his gloved hand around Nathan's, the grip firm but not unkind. He gave a slight nod, the movement barely perceptible beneath the wide brim of his hat. It was an acknowledgement, a silent confirmation that Nathan had made his choice. He was a passenger on this train now, bound to its tracks, his fate intertwined with its destination. Nathan felt a strange sense of calm descend upon him as he surrendered to the conductor's touch. The fear that had gripped him moments before seemed to dissipate, replaced by a curious sense of detachment. It was as if he were watching himself from a distance, a detached observer to his own life. The conductor turned without a word and began walking towards the front of the train car. Nathan followed, his hand still clasped in the conductor's grip. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew that the door he had entered through was no longer visible, swallowed by the shadows and the swaying motion of the train. As they walked, the rhythmic chugging of the engine seemed to grow louder, more insistent. The train car swayed gently from side to side, the movement almost hypnotic. Nathan found himself lulled by the rhythm, his mind growing quiet, his thoughts slowing to a crawl. They reached the end of the train car, stopping before the frosted glass door. The conductor released his grip on Nathan's hand, the touch lingering like a phantom sensation. He reached out and grasped the door handle, the metal cold and smooth beneath his glove. He pulled the door open, revealing another train car, identical to the first. Empty velvet seats stretched out before them, illuminated by flickering gas lamps. The air was thick with the same cloying scent of dust and decay, the same oppressive silence. The conductor gestured for Nathan to enter. He hesitated for a moment, a flicker of defiance stirring within him. But the moment passed as quickly as it had come. He was beyond questions now, beyond fear. He was a passenger on the last train, and he would see this journey through to its end. He stepped across the threshold, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The conductor followed close behind, closing the door behind them with a soft click. The train lurched forward, picking up speed as it raced deeper into the heart of the unknown. The wheels turned, their rhythmic clattering a constant reminder that some journeys, once begun, cannot be undone. The last train was moving, carrying Nathan Hale towards a destination he could not foresee, a destiny he could no longer escape. The train car swayed, a gentle rocking that lulled the senses into a false sense of security. Yet the air crackled with tension. Nathan's gaze was drawn to the frosted glass door. It pulsated with an unnatural light. He felt a chill, raising goosebumps on his arms. He turned to face the conductor, but the conductor was gone. Nathan was alone, shadows seeping from the walls. He took a step back, putting distance between himself and the dancing shadows. As he moved, he heard it again, a whisper, soft and indistinct, carried on the edge of perception. He stopped, holding his breath, straining to hear. It was closer now, the whisper swirling around him like the first tendrils of a rising storm. He closed his eyes, focusing on the sound, trying to discern words from the murmuring chaos. And then he heard it, clear as a bell, echoing in the silence of his own mind. "You should not have come." His eyes snapped open, a gasp escaping his lips. He was surrounded. The air thrummed with whispers, a chorus of voices rising from the very walls of the train. He couldn't make out individual words, but the message was clear. Menace, warning, and a deep, abiding sorrow that resonated in his bones. He stumbled back, his hand reaching out to steady himself against the plush velvet seat. His fingers sank into the fabric, the unexpected softness sending a jolt of fear through him. This train, this journey, was not what it seemed. It was a charade, a gilded cage designed to lure unsuspecting souls to their doom. He spun around, his heart pounding against his ribs like a frantic bird trapped in a cage. His eyes darted around the train car, searching for an escape, an answer. But there was none. The windows were sealed, the door at the end of the carriage had vanished, replaced by a solid wall of darkness. He was trapped. The whispers grew louder, pressing in on him, threatening to overwhelm him with their cacophony of despair. He could feel their icy fingers tracing the edges of his sanity, pulling him down into a maelstrom of fear and madness. He had to get out, had to escape this nightmare train before it consumed him entirely. He lunged for the door he remembered, the door he had entered through. But his hand met only cold, unyielding metal. He hammered on the door, a primal scream rising in his throat. But the sound was swallowed by the train, absorbed by the velvet and mahogany, leaving only the echo of his terror. He was trapped in a cage of his own making, a prison built of his own fear and regret. The manuscript, his manuscript, had led him here. It had promised him fame, whispered of literary immortality. Instead, it had delivered him to this, a one-way journey into the heart of darkness. The train lurched violently, the metal frame groaning under a strain unseen. The gaslights flickered wildly, casting grotesque, elongated shadows. They twisted around Nathan, reaching out like spectral tendrils. He stumbled, his hand grasping for purchase, finding only cold metal. The whispers had become a cacophony, a chorus of tormented souls. They swirled around him, a vortex of fear and despair. He had a fleeting memory of the world outside, a world bathed in sunlight and laughter. It seemed like a lifetime ago, a distant dream fading into the encroaching darkness. He had crossed a threshold, a boundary between worlds, and there was no turning back. He was bound to this train now, his fate intertwined with its sinister purpose. The train plunged onward, the rhythmic clattering of the wheels against the tracks no longer a comfort, but a relentless drumbeat heralding his demise. He was hurtling towards a destination unknown, a final stop on a journey that promised no return. And for the first time, he understood the true meaning of fear. It wasn't the fear of the unknown, the fear of what lay ahead. It was the fear of self-annihilation, the slow unraveling of his mind, his very being, as the train journeyed deeper into the heart of darkness. He was no longer Nathan Hale, the writer, the dreamer. He was but a vessel, a hollow shell, occupied by the whispers and the shadows. He looked up, drawn by an unseen force, to the frosted glass window across from him. For a fleeting moment, he saw a reflection staring back at him, but it wasn't his own. It was a face drained of all colour, all life. The eyes were hollow sockets reflecting the flickering gaslight. The mouth was a grotesque gash, frozen in a silent scream. Nathan realised with a sickening certainty it was his reflection, or rather what his reflection would soon become. The train lurched violently, the sound of metal screeching. The gaslights flickered and died, plunging the train into darkness. The whispers reached a fever pitch, then silence. Absolute, consuming silence. Nathan lay slumped against the cold metal wall, trembling. He didn't know how much time had passed. The train was no longer moving. He could feel the stillness, the absence of the rhythmic clatter. He was no longer a passenger on a journey. He was an exhibit in a museum of his own making, a testament to the folly of ambition. He was at the end.